Satnam, yogis and yoginis, hello and welcome back. Today we have an exciting video where we're going to be reflecting upon everything we talked about on chapter 2. This is going to be a review of chapter 2. So if you have been watching along every video, this is going to be like a compilation of the key elements for every one of these on the second part of the Yoga Sutras. And if you haven't, then maybe this is like a general review. If you have already studied the Yoga Sutras and you want to just remember what every chapter is about, this is a good video to go into. We did already this on chapter 1 as well. We did a long reflection upon every part of chapter 1. I will show you the summary that we did on that one. Yes, going through every video and what was that video about and what we covered in that video. And I think that was quite useful. So I'm planning to do the same thing today. So we're going to go straight away into that. Let me find my brush pen. All right, so chapter 2. Yoga Sutras. And chapter 2 is called the Sadhana Pada. So let's get, hold on 1 second. Let's get a little ruler. Let's make it beautiful. All right. So, how many videos have we created on chapter 2? It's going to be from videos from the 11 onward. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. Let's make a little line for everyone so we have enough space. More or less. '13th, 14th. '16th and 17th. Okay. So the first video that we did on this chapter 2 was referring to the sutras 2.1 and 2.2. You will remember that this was the sutras in which we talked about what is Kriya Yoga. So I will give a brief summary of every one of these videos, and then later on, if you want to go and watch them again and you want to go deeper into those, you can go to the appropriate video to find the information that you are looking for. So Kriya Yoga, remember Kriya was about action, and there is a number of places where we have information about what this Kriya Yoga is. And in this video, we talked about Kriya Yoga as the way it is described, maybe not by name, but by action in the Bhagavad Gita, and the way that Krishna talks about the different aspects of yoga, and talks about karma yoga, and karma being also the yoga of action, karma coming from the same root, karma, as kriya, kar. So we talked about that, and Satnam Pete, hello, good to see you here. And what did we do in that video? We talked about the Kriya Yoga from Yogananda as well, the kind of Kriya Yoga that Yogananda brought to the West. And then we contrasted those versions of Kriya Yoga with what Patanjali calls Kriya Yoga. And particularly, Patanjali refers to Kriya Yoga to three things, three aspects: tapas, swadhyaya, and Ishvara pranidhana. You may remember that tapas was about fire, fiery, and therefore is more about the fire in the body and the practice that you do with your physical body. So in this video, we associated it to the body. Where do I have my, hold on. Maybe my daughters were using the pens and they disappear from here. So tapas is very much about what happens with the physical body. So this is generally translated as study or self-study. It's not necessarily a study of the intellectual study, something that happens in the mind, but it's about studying the scriptures and also studying yourself and studying how do you act in the world, comparing yourself to what the scriptures say. So it is not an intellectual thing only. It does involve the intellect in some way, but it's more than that. It's about studying ourselves, self-study. And that will include also meditate, because when we meditate, we are observing how we are maybe, let's say, reacting to some sound that is coming or some inconvenient posture that we have or something that is uncomfortable. And when we are sitting in silence, then this is creating some reaction in us. We observe that, and then we notice these aspects of our reaction, how we do we adjust. And so all these things happen in meditation, but we are reflecting upon ourselves during that. So this is in relationship to the mind. So it's engaging the mind with the scriptures as well, but it's not just an intellectual thing. And then Ishvara Pranidhana, we talked about this as the surrender to the divinity, to something divine. Ishvara as the aspect of the divine that we must relate to, the way that we talk about God. And this Pranidhana being a surrender, not just a devotion, not just having devotion and faith, but actually surrendering yourself in that way. And we talked about this concept of surrender that sounds like a negative thing, like I give up. But there has to be this kind of giving up in some way, giving up of what you expect, giving up of your pride in your actions, even in your dharma, pride in your discipline. There's a number of things that you give up, and eventually you have to give up your ego, and all this is transformed through this surrender coming from the heart, and it's something spiritual. This is body, this is mind, this is heart, but it's also the spirit. So body, mind, and spirit are connected through that devotion. And when we talked about this, we talked about how the fire is like burning impurities, and so that we purify the body and purify ourselves. We talked about a number of metaphors that would help us to understand this fire, like internal alchemy and things like that. And so it's body, mind, and the heart and the spirit. That was 2.1 and 2.2. That was the first video. The second video was Sutras 2.3 all the way to 2.11. And this was about, dealing with the 5 kleshas. And when we did this video, I forgot to show, this is the diagram that we use in the first video. This is where we were talking about the alchemy. We came back to this metaphor that comes from the Bhagavad Gita about the self and the relationship to the mind and the senses. And here is the body and the mind and the heart to the spirit of the 3 aspects, as it appears in the Bhagavad Gita, and the relationship to the way it's talked about by Patanjali with the body and the mind and the heart to the spirit. So a connection between the Bhagavad Gita and the Yoga Sutras through this concept of Kriya Yoga. And that was the first video. And the second video, when we talk about dealing with the 5 kleshas, this is where we did this drawing. Yeah, sorry, not really a drawing, it's more like writing. So there is these 5 kleshas, and they all originate from this concept of avidya. So let me put it here so that we have the summary. There is 5 kleshas the first one. This is avidya. Avidya, generally, we understand it as ignorance, and vidya would mean the knowledge of truth. That's where the word Vedas comes from vidya, knowledge, knowing something that is true. And avidya is ignorance, and this ignorance is part of the mechanism that Maya generates in us to be confused, and we believe what Maya is telling us. We believe a number of things that are not true, but by that belief, then we feel isolated in the world, and we think this life, that's it, that's what it is. When this life finishes, everything finishes. We see ourselves separated from other people because we see through our eyes, and this is my hand, and that is not my hand, therefore you are different from me, and then we feel that we are separate from other people. And so all these perceptions created by Maya are making me feel isolated and individualized, and helps the formation of the ego. And that ego is necessary so that then we can get over it. Again, this get over. But it's necessary. It's part of the process. So Maya creates this fantasy that we believe it. We believe the illusion, and then we, getting hypnotized by that, we create our own ego, and that is the origin of the 5 kleshas. The ignorance that we receive, not knowing the truth, creates all these other kleshas. We know about kleshas, the same word connected to klishta, and we saw about this in the first chapter, chapter 1, when we talked about the colorings of the mind, which was one of the most central concepts of the Yoga Sutras, having to remove the colorings of the mind, which is what doesn't allow us to perceive reality as what it is. We want to perceive the truth, but we don't have knowledge of the truth. We don't have vidya, we have avidya, ignorance. And out of that ignorance, a number of things arise. As I mentioned, the first one is egoism, is asmita. The sense that I am, and that I am different from other things. And from here, my ego tells me what I like and what I dislike. And then what I like, I get attached to it. So 3 would be raga. That's the attachment. You will remember. And then and dvesha, what I don't like, what I dislike. That was my disgust, kind of feeling that pulled away from. And so that's the like and the dislike. And then finally, let's see if I write this correctly, has an H, abhi, ni, ve, sha. I think it's written like that. And that's like, okay, so I have this life, I only have this life, I cling to this life, and I am afraid of death. And when we were exploring these 5 kleshas, we noticed the connection between these 5 kleshas to other things that appear in different sections of yogic philosophy, like the 5 evils or 5 thieves, often talked about. And not so much into the yogic literature, but if we look in psychology, we know that there is 6 basic emotions, or 6 universal emotions that you can detect anywhere, and you can see them in any culture, in any race, even isolated cultures. They have the same facial expressions. Actually, you can even see them in animals. And so these emotions are interesting. And because emotion is very much connected to emotional reactions, and that comes from the ego, then we can very easily associate some of these emotions with the 5 kleshas. So, for example, avidya, this is ignorance when we ignore something and something appears and we didn't know of it, we were not aware of it. We are going to be surprised by that. So, surprise is one of those basic emotions that arise out of this. And the ego is going to make me feel separate from others, but it's also like, this is me, and maybe you feel above others, or you feel proud of what you like. And then there is a number of things when you like something. Let me skip asmita for a moment. Raga, the attachment, that's linked to the things that I like. And if I'm attached to something and I enjoy that thing, I'm attached to the things that I enjoy. So Joy is connected to this. And Dvesha, the things that I feeling aversion from, this is aversion, that is going to link to one of the other basic emotions called disgust. So joy and disgust. And if I get what I like, then I'm going to feel joyful. But if I don't get it, I'm going to feel angry. And that's coming from the ego. That's why I was skipping it for a moment, because anger kind of connects in that way. And Abhinivesha connected to the fear of death. So fear. So you see, surprise, anger, joy, disgust, and fear, 5 of the most basic emotions, they are directly associated with these 5 kleshas, or the 5 colorings. Satnam Isabel, short connection just to say hello. Hello, Isabel. I'm glad that you will look later. This is a summary today of the whole chapter 2. Okay, so these are the 5 kleshas, and there is a number of stages in these kleshas that there was also mentioned in this section, in this video. We talked about the different stages, and the kleshas can be subtle or it can be active. If it's subtle, then it's the suggestion from Patanjali is that we check where is this subtle emotion arising from. And I call it emotion, but let's say this subtle klesha, this coloring, is it attachment or is it aversion? Where is it arising from? And try to find the origin. And basically it's a way of self-reflection. And self-inquiry applies very well here. And if it's very active, you're getting angry, it's happening at the very moment, then Patanjali tells us, well, do meditate. So there is this on the subtle, he would tell us self-reflect. And if it is active, it tells us meditate, which is very similar, but just slightly different. Very good. All right, we are sailing through 2.12 to 2.25. This is the third video we did on this chapter, video 13 in the series. And up to 25, that was the breaking the alliance. Was it? Yeah, the alliance of karma. This was a huge chunk of sutras from the 12 to the 25. That was quite a lot that we saw. And let's go through it a little bit. It was telling us, look, these kleshas, they generate karma. And it was telling us, well, they generate karma. And the moment that you have karma creates the situation in which you are going to have to reincarnate. So by the fact that you have karma, you're going to have to reincarnate. And that reincarnation is going to be determined by the karma. So how much life you're going to be living in this planet and the experiences that you're going to be having, all that is going to be as a consequence of this karma that you accumulate. It was telling us, the alliance of karma, it was telling us that this karma stores in these samskaras, and they come with us for the next life. So they travel with us. And what we needed to do is to avoid creating karma. So to avoid this creation of karma, that's when the concept of the virtues comes in. So rather than being moral about it, rather than giving us a moral code, he said, well, the yamas and the niyamas, which will come shortly after, you can take it as a moral code, but it's more like, look, if you do any of these things, going against the yamas and the niyamas, you're going to be creating karma, and you're going to create pain for yourself, because karma creates reincarnation, and that even if it's good karma, you're at the end, in the long term, you're going to be suffering from that in some way. And that's where this suffering came in, and that you needed to have this discrimination to be able to see that even good karma is also suffering. So it was telling us, look, you have to develop viveka. Yeah, this capacity to discern, discriminate what is from what isn't. And realize that all the experiences that we have in life, they are going to be eventually creating pain. And now this pain starts from a simple thing. That is when Purusha joined Prakriti. So Purusha being the seer, and Prakriti is the creation. So that's like the scene. If you wish, we can put it like this. The seer goes with the scene. And out of ignorance, out of the avidya, then the seer merges with the scene, and then we get hypnotized by that. We don't have the viveka, we don't have the discrimination to realize that's not who we are. And that happens. But you know what? That's also necessary. So here we talked a little bit about this diagram. You may remember the cosmic manifestation. This is how Purusha becomes manifest. The unmanifested consciousness, God in the unmanifest form, becomes form, takes form. And that form will go into the gunas, and the gunas have some qualities, and the tattvas eventually. This is all in this video, in these sutras 2.12 to 2.25. It's kind of alluding to this diagram, even though it doesn't draw the diagram. This is more coming from Samkhya philosophy a little bit later, but it's basically the most fundamental elements of this diagram are right there, contained in those sutras. And it tells about different stages of gunas, the sattva, the rajas, and the tamas, and the different elements, and how we get hypnotized by what we see and what these elements are capturing our consciousness. So, but it's telling us also, Patanjali was telling us, look, all this Purusha getting joined by Prakriti, so the seer merged with the scene, this was necessary. And say it was necessary because we had to get hypnotized so that because consciousness is always consciousness of something. So what am I conscious of? Well, conscious of what I'm looking at. And so you're looking outside, and then you see this whole world around, and then you are looking at that, and looking at that. And at some point, when you go into this self-reflection and self-study, you realize, wait, I am looking at that. So who is that I that is looking? And by doing that, the consciousness turns around and realizes, well, I am becoming conscious of all that. And the moment that you do that, then you are becoming conscious of yourself, of your consciousness. So consciously conscious. So that turning around can only occur after we go through the period of the hypnosis. This is similar to the idea that we need to develop an ego and feel separated, and then realize that actually we are all connected. But we have to go through that process of what is called like the individualization of the soul, right? The soul feeling separated from the universe and somehow feel that we are so little, so small, and so separated. And then slowly expand the view and expand the consciousness to see actually we were never disconnected. That's necessary. So that was this video. It's a lot of sutras, it's a lot of little details. I'm not going to go into much depth, otherwise it's like, why am I doing a summary, right? Let's carry on. 2.26, excuse me, 2.29. This is the point where we actually talk about I was not pointing down. This is where we go into the 8 limbs of yoga. This is where Patanjali actually mentions these 8 steps, the 8 limbs. He said, well, yoga is like this beautiful tree. And this tree will contain the 8 yamas, and niyamas will be a fundamental previous step to avoid generating karma. We will go into those in the next sutras. And then there is a sequence, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. And this is the 8 limbs. It doesn't go into depth with them, but in this video that we did, we actually went into a lot of depth. We saw how these 8 were connected, and we did we talked about this viveka, this separation of seed and the sin, how it was important. So he's saying, okay, so to create this viveka, this discrimination between the seed and the sin, we have to go through these 8 steps. That's what we are going to get. Through the 8 steps, we get to the self-realization. And we did a nice exercise in which we explore, well, let's go backwards, right? If we want to get to samadhi, how are we going to get there? Well, samadhi is union with everything and union with the divine. Well, we're going to get there to that point through meditation. And you cannot meditate if you're not concentrated, and you cannot concentrate it if you are distracted with the senses looking out. And in order to bring the senses in, you're going to need a lot of energy, and that energy is going to flow only if you are healthy enough. This is like a super summary of the path that is necessary to get to samadhi. And all the way, then you better don't create any more karma to not make your life any more difficult, and to sustain your practice and hold what we're going to see later into the yamas and the niyamas. It comes right away. Seeing this consequence of every step, like how every step takes to the next, was very important also when we explored it on the actual practice, when we are meditating and we are looking out through the indriyas. Yeah, we are from our mind. Okay, this diagram, I'm not sure I showed it in the other one, but this is the diagram from the course on the mind that we did in this channel as well. And we were looking through the 5 senses, and this comes into these 4 functions of the mind, mana, chitta, buddhi, ahankara. And so this input is coming in, we process it from the mind, and then the process of pratyahara is going inwards, and then dharana, concentrating, so with concentric circles to the center, the middle, the meditation, the dhyana, and in the middle we find the self. And that also refers to this diagram. Today is about showing a lot of diagrams that we have already seen, but it's this going inwards to find the self, the real self, the satnam, the truth. Truth will be vidya. Vidya means the truth about myself. That's the self-knowledge, the realization, which connects to the self-inquiry, the self-study of Swadhyaya, and eventually the self-realization of the end of the path. So all this was connected. This was a very important video. If you have not watched it, this video was a fundamental video that explains the whole practice that is created by Patanjali, or not created, but described by Patanjali. So that video was fundamental to understanding the Yoga Sutras. And then we started. So, well, let's go. 2.30 to 2.39, an introduction to yamas and niyamas, and we went in depth into the yamas. And we talked about this concept that yamas and niyamas is not just a do's and don'ts, it's not just a moral code, it's something else. It's about preventing the creation of karma and helping you to sustain your practice. The guidelines that are given in the yamas and the niyamas are there to help you in the actual practice. And one way that I understand it, and I explain it in that video, is that yamas is how we relate to the outside world. Let me just put it right here. Niyamas are going to come next. So the yamas are the relationship to the outside, and it's more like external. And it's often translated as restraints. And the niyamas are more internal, and it's more like duties or observances, sometimes called observance. Yep. And this, by the way, this is 2.40 to 2.45. And the 5 yamas, we explored them in detail, and we saw it was ahimsa, satya, asteya, since satya, asteya, brahmacharya, and aparigraha. And ahimsa was about the truthfulness. Sorry, not harming. That's satya. Not harming, harmlessness. This is truthfulness. And asteya is not stealing. Brahmacharya. We talked in detail about brahmacharya because it's a concept that is often understood in the ascetic way, in the sense of refraining from having any kind of sexual relationship, and it's the kind of conduct that would monks take, but there is a more modern understanding that is for the householder, and it's about how do you conduct yourself. And the actual word brahmacharya, if you translate it directly from the Sanskrit, would be divine conduct. And it has to do with how you regulate your passions and your impulses and your needs, but it's not about refraining from anything sexual. It is more nuanced than that. And aparigraha finally is the non-possessiveness. Non-possessive. So these are the 5. Let me get the chart that we did on that video. Here it is, in big. And we also explored how every one of these 5, by Patanjali says, there is a kind of gift that is given by the mastery of this one. And also we mentioned ahimsa, that was the first one and the most important. All of the others come as a result of ahimsa. And if it doesn't comply with ahimsa, we don't do that. So for example, something may be true, but just because something is true, we are not going to say it if it's going to create harm. So ahimsa is primordial, and satya has to comply to that one too, right? So, and by developing this capacity to not harm and be aware of the impact of what you do and what you say, the gift that is given is an aura of peace. So around you, there's a space around you where conflict dissolves. And we saw examples, like for example, when we say something to a friend, oh, I'm only joking, but then we criticize them, or we say something that can be painful, but we are pretending just to be, I'm just joking. And so these red things were examples in which we don't realize that we are breaking the yama. So for example, stealing, when we waste people's time, when we are late, for example, when we are not punctual, this is a way to waste people's time, and therefore we are stealing their time, which is the most valuable thing we have. But if we respect it and we master asteya, then prosperity flows, and so on. We saw more than five actually, different examples of ways in which we don't realize how we are breaking the yama. But if we manage to master any yama, these are the gifts that we receive. That was I think it's pretty nice. The study of the yamas and the niyamas is very profound and very inspiring to think for yourself, well, I actually, independently of what is a moral code or not, we want to be better people. We want to develop these virtues. We want, we are utilizing this life and we want to grow in this life. So having this guidance of the yamas and the niyamas helps us to calibrate when we are getting away from that line of virtue, let's say. It's like a moral compass, but again, this is not just about morality. It's about avoiding the creation of karma. Okay? That was mostly in relationship to the outside. In relationship towards the inside, this was more the niyamas. And here we have saucha and santosha Tapas. And here come the three. Yeah, Sodeya and Ishvara Pranidhana. Which you will recognize that these three are Kriya Yoga, as defined by Patanjali over here. So he says, look, Kriya Yoga, he started the second chapter with this. This is the beginning of our practice, and this is going to be contained within the Niyamas. So this is part of these two branches of the 8 branches of yoga that is fundamental. So Tapas, Sodeya, Isvara Pranidhana. This is internal relationship, the fire and the self-study. Let's put it here. Yeah. Fiery practice, the self-study. And here, when I say self-study, you will also remember this diagram I just showed. This is about the self. Yeah, which self? Is it the higher self? Is it the lower self? Is it the false self or the hidden self? No, this is the real self, the Satnam. This is another video we have on the channel if you are interested more about the self. This is, to me, one of the most fundamental elements to understand in yogic philosophy, the concept of self. What is the self? So there's my fiery practice, my self-study, and my devotional surrender. Devotion. I'm running out of space in my table, and my writing is looking worse and worse. Let me move a little bit the screen. Oh, and let's put Saucha and Santosha as well. Saucha was purity, which actually tapas is going to help a lot with that in the physical aspect. Tapas is more like the physical fire, which burns impurities, but Saucha can refer to more mental or other levels of purity, emotional purity as well. And Santosha is satisfied, being satisfied and at peace, contentment. I always think satisfied because of my friend, my Chinese friend that I mentioned in this video. And here we have the actual drawing that we did, writing that we did on that video. And this was the definition, and this is what you get if you master it. And so, for example, if you master Santosha, contentment, you receive supreme joy. Who doesn't want supreme joy? Yeah. But this is the way, examples in which we break that niyama. For example, when we are allowing the perfectionist aspect within us to rule, and it becomes like a dictator in our life, perfectionistic, yeah, always doing everything perfect, then that means you are not content. And yeah, this is there's full of paradoxes here as well. I'm not going to go into those though. All right. How is it looking? Almost finished, huh? Finally, 2.46 all the way to 2.55. This will be the last video we did. And this was asana, pranayama, and pratyahara. And we explored the 3 aspects. We said how asana, it's a comfortable posture, comfortable seat. And we explored a concept here, which is this idea of being attentive, attention without tension. Yeah, tension with no tension. When you are comfortable, when you are relaxed, when you are stable, but with attention at the same time, not sleep, this is what we call asana, and how it can be an attitude for life, not just a posture that we do, something that we are, putting the leg behind our head, or, put the legs up and the head down, something like that, some inverted posture, but actually an attitude of being comfortable and stable within us. And what else was this? Oh yeah, we talked about how the pair of opposites, when you get to this place, the pair of opposites will not disturb you. And that was interesting because it's pair of opposites is the definition of a yogi, when you're not affected by the pair of opposites. So this is in relationship to asana. asana. Then pranayama. This was an extension of your energy. And there is actually 4 types. And Patanjali mentions there is the pranayama will is an extension of prana, of energy, but generally we relate to prana through the breath. That's the way that we most generally do it. And so he tells us about controlling the breath. And so he says, well, there is 4 different types of pranayama. That will be the inhale, the exhale, the holding, or phases of the pranayama. And he said those are the 3 basics, but there is a 4th one as well, which is when you are submerged into prana. And he is kind of alluding to the aspect that when you get to certain levels of samadhi, the breath may stop and the body continues functioning because there is prana. It's like you are bathing into energy, but you don't need to take it by breathing in. You just absorb it. You are just through your skin or through your chakras, you just take the prana inside. So that would be kind of like the 4th kind. And Patanjali also said, well, that you don't work it, you don't do that. That happens naturally. You work on the other 3, and the other 3 you have to see how you work on the inhale, exhale, and the holding, and you do it by regulating the place, the time, and the number as well. The place would be whether you are focusing the breath on the nostrils or the throat or the lungs or the navi, and that's the place. The time would be, for example, inhaling in 8 seconds, exhaling in 16, and finding patterns and proportions that create different states of consciousness. And the number would be when we do segmented breathing, like inhaling in 8 breaths. So like that. So that was pranayama. And in pratyahara, that was when in this diagram, let me see what I have it again. Pratyahara is coming from the senses inwards, going inwards with the senses, going in. And so that's taking away the hypnosis that Maya has created. You see, Maya is pulling us out, and we have been hypnotized by what we see, what we hear, what we feel, what we touch, what we smell, what we taste. All these things have been hypnotizing us. And Pratyahara is about pulling back and going back inside. And so, how can we say this? Pratyahara is like withdrawal from the senses. And by doing that, there was one thing that Patanjali mentions, is that the veil that covers the inner light, the prakasha, dissolves or disappears. And then when the veil disappears, you are in full preparation for the dharana dhyana samadhi, the last aspect, which is what's going to come next. And you are ready to shine. Yeah, the veil dissolves, you are in contact with your light. The light is also a way to say the light of consciousness, and therefore you're ready for dharana dhyana and samadhi. And this is leading to an understanding of our own nature meaning being consciousness. So this was preparing us for the nature of consciousness, and then we focus that consciousness inwards, and that will be the process of samyama, which comes on chapter 3. This is it. This is chapter 2. If you've been going through every video, if you watched all of them and you reach here, well, this is like a feeling of accomplishment, right? To reach to this point, we've done a lot already together with the chapter 1 that was more philosophical in nature, more theoretical. This is more practical. This is quite a lot that we have covered, and congratulations for reaching this point. Now, I mentioned chapter 3 and chapter 4. I'm not going to do like a whole list of videos on that. I'm just going to do one video one video reflecting upon what those 2 chapters say, and I'm going to tidy everything up and just complete the course in this way. Just before the holidays, we're going to be completing this course because the most elemental things are covered, and chapter 3 is a lot about cities, and chapter 4 is a lot about samadhi, which we have already talked quite a bit in the first chapter. So I don't feel the need to go over that in depth as well. But for today, it's quite a lot. Thank you for watching everything. Thank you for your support and the likes and the clicks and the comments and all that. Let me know how it went for you. Tell me if you understand it the same way, if there is some details that you would like to explain in a different way, or you want to understand something that you don't, then just feel free to write in the comments and we interact with each other. Thank you very much. Until next time. Sadhana.